Okay, so this is the part of the program where we talk about UC-HiPACC as it has been over the last 4 years, and what has worked and what needs improvement. Well, why don't I start? I think HiPACC has done an outstanding job on its events, its workshops, its summer schools. They have been, I've been involved in them as both a lecturer and as a host organization, and I will do so again this summer. And so your back office or your front office, Sue Grasso, has just been outstanding in terms of creating these events. And, these are all science-focused and bringing together great faculty and some of the world's best young researchers. So I think just in terms of keeping a focus on the science and keeping that vibrant has just been excellent. And I couldn't see, the next incarnation not doing that. I also think that it's been very good at providing small bits of funding that have greased the skids for a variety of ancillary activities. I know I got a little money for the first ENSO workshop, which was held back in 2010. I think HiPACC has provided some money for YT. I learned today that it's provided money for the CGE. So I think having that kind of, discretionary funds to, invest opportunistically in what the community needs at that point in time has also been excellent. I don't have much insight on what it feels like to a graduate student at UC. I suppose if you were members of those summer schools and workshops, you got something out of it. But, beyond that, I don't know whether it has made a dent in the graduate experience of a UC astronomy grad. So perhaps that is, something worth discussing and, bringing out for possibly focus in the next round. I think I'll stop there. So facilitated collaborations.
Well, especially between the different campuses and
Right.
campuses and labs.
Right.
And there have been awarded 10 of these little grants that facilitate that. And this is something that I think is really hard to get from the funding agencies. Well, that's all.
Yeah, that was a stated objective of the proposal, and I'm glad to hear that it's actually happened. Did it happen at the level that you had hoped as director?
Well, we put out these opportunities, and incidentally, there's an opportunity now. We just announced it, and the website's live. And I forget what our deadline is, but it's like a month from now, sometime in April, to apply again for these little grants. And the individual grants up to $1,000 for travel are automatically approved. And the grants for up to $5,000, which is what the Davis-Irvine one was one of those, and it was for 2 years. And we said you could have another $5,000, but they actually didn't spend all of the first $5,000. But anyway, the money's there. The only issue has just been that we haven't had as many applications. Somebody has to organize this, and we try to provide the infrastructure, as James Bullock said. But on the other hand, you do have to have some faculty member or even graduate student step forward and do some organizational work. For one of these YT workshops at Santa Cruz, it was actually Nathan Goldbaum who did the organization. But we insist that a faculty member take responsibility because we're handing out money and the faculty, we have hooks on the faculty. So Mark Krumholtz kindly acted as the faculty sponsor for that one.
Would have gone to jail if Nathan had absconded.
Exactly. So we need to have more Mark Krumholtzes and Nathan Goldbaums.
Okay.
You know, it's a great idea, and Peter, of course, explicitly mentioned this in his talk. And what I should do is contact people. Actually, Mike Warren would be a natural person to contact at Los Alamos, and I'm not sure who the right person is at Livermore. Peter Aninos is our official contact. But the role that HiPACC could play is a facilitator, advertising it, helping to organize it, because we're very good at that, thanks to Sue Grasso and the other staff people. And we're getting to be pretty well known. So we should definitely put that in assuming that the labs cooperate.
So at LBL, I'm not sure about the...
So it gets recorded.
So it gets recorded. So I know LBL does it. I'm not sure about the weapons labs, but I know some of the other labs do it. They run something called the SULI program for DOE, which runs actually all year round. But the big hit is always in the summertime. Undergraduates apply to work at the lab for 8 weeks. They do a formal presentation at the end of it. And basically, they put their resume online along with some letters of reference. And you, as a researcher, go through, select who you want. Encouraging. I will tell you right now that we have more money than we have students. So every year, we basically suck in everybody we want. If there were more Astro undergraduates from the various campuses applying, they would get wonderful opportunities. So HiPACC would be very good at advertising this for us. And they go out earlier.
We could start this year if you want.
Yeah, well, so we should do it for the fall term, which the applications are coming up in a few months. The big summer ones, those come out in December with due dates in January. So, yeah, but they roll all year round. And just pointing people to this, informing all the departments to tell their students to apply for it would be great.
Well, thanks for the suggestions, Sam.
Okay, Gillian's turn.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. So we were asked to think about what HiPACC has done right and what needs improvement. And I think it's done two things very well, and they're basically what were just said, which is firstly, the conferences and workshops, I think, have been a great success, particularly the annual workshop, which is the joint workshop between CGE and HiPACC, at least from an observer's point of view, which is what I am. That's been a very successful, it's an international workshop, international conference. There are 100 people. It has very high impact and certainly energizes what's being done in California. The second thing I think you've done very well is these small grants. It truly does help people who just need a little something and don't want to sit down and write a 15-page proposal to get $5,000. That's a great resource to have. And I think we do need to do a better job of getting people to apply for these grants and really thinking creatively about how these small amounts of money could be used. So what could HiPACC do better? I would say that having even more of these workshops, mini workshops, if you will, just 1 or 2 days, can be very, very useful. Thinking about where the highest impact could be for these workshops. And particularly thinking about how to bring in observers. Because observers have lots of data, and together we can do very interesting things. But oftentimes observers are frustrated because they have data and they want to interpret it. But they go and they look in a paper and they can't find the interpretation they want. They can't find a prediction at high redshift, or they can't find quite the problem that they have the data to solve, and then they don't necessarily know who to talk to in the community. So that would be a really important thing moving forward that I think could improve what has been done already, is just figuring out ways to bring observers in more effectively to what HiPACC is doing and tie them into the right people.
How can we get more observers to apply?
Well, that's a good question. I think some attempt from both sides, observers and simulators, to understand what the other people are doing so that we can better talk to each other. I think that's part of the problem. Oftentimes, okay.
No, when you're done.
Oftentimes, I think we have particular problems that we can solve, but they're not necessarily the problems that simulators are working on, because the problems they can solve, they work on, and the problems we can solve, because we've got a new shiny instrument, we work on, right? So how do we improve that? I don't have the answer, other than we need to, both sides make more effort to talk to each other.
Yeah, so that made me think that a workshop or a conference focusing on, the low-hanging fruit that exists between what observers are doing and what simulators are doing. Of course, we go to topical conferences. There are observers, there are simulators. We're all kind of talking to ourselves, and we're generally not asking the question, I need from you this so that I can better interpret my observations. Or, I need this observation so I can better guide my simulation or my modeling effort. I think, so, like we've had Future of Astrocomputing conferences, we could have something focusing on the intersections between observation and simulation. I don't know if we have time for another one.
I think that's a really good idea. Can I just say, I think that's a really good idea.
Like a summit, organized in a different way.
Because people are busy and they have to think they're going to get something out of something. I tried to get more observers to come to this meeting, and they just said, "Oh, I'm too busy," or "I won't get anything out of it," or you've heard these excuses before. What else can? How else can HiPACC improve? I would say, well, I think Phil already made this comment earlier. I would like to see baryons in simulations, because baryons are what we measure. And if you're putting baryons in simulations, that's great, but let's figure out how to do it better.
Of course, we're working on that.
I understand. Well, we can constrain some things. Maybe we can help.
So let me speak a little bit to the Los Alamos laboratory perspective of what needs are and how we would like to engage. So I think, as has been emphasized here, this organization is doing a good job on the simulation end of things. But increasingly, what our needs are, as we heard earlier today, was the whole issue of one thing that's increasing constantly is the data volumes that are coming through. And it's actually the flow that is one of the real issues and was brought up this morning. It's the velocity, ever-increasing amounts of data, sensors being deployed all over the place for various purposes. What's really critical is the ability, and this is a big part of data science, is to extract knowledge in real time and recognize, for national security purposes, threats or opportunities as they arise and respond to them in a timely manner. That is a very big deal to us, and that's what's driven a decade of interest in machine learning, automated systems that without humans in the loop and so forth. And that, I think, is really important, not just for national security, but also national competitiveness. And that's what's been driving some of the industry. Wall Street worries about fractions of a second for transaction information and so forth. Increasingly, these are games measured in seconds and being able to respond. And so I think it would be very important to include things like these data science aspects that are emerging, becoming more and more important. So, and all the program managers recognize at the laboratory. And we've been working that even before there was a big data problem that had been recognized. I think the nation recognizes that now, and that's why it's getting so much traction in Washington. So I think, and so the ability to bring students in has always been an extremely important thing at Los Alamos. We do have these big summer programs. We've been pretty successful in our postdoc programs of bringing people in, and we'd like to continue that, and we see UC system as a natural place to do that. It's a little harder now that we've broken away a bit from UC, although we're still associated with UC. And I think it's really important to try and keep up that end of what we're doing, is to keep UC engaged with the laboratory, because that's where a tremendous number of our top performers have come from in the past.
So let me ask, suppose that we wanted to organize a summer school, one of our HiPACC style summer schools where there's code availability and sharing and so forth in this area. Could you identify a group of people to act as the lecturers and the code people? And would it even be appropriate to host that at Los Alamos, for example? Incidentally, LBL hosted, jointly with Berkeley, the 2011 summer school. Peter and Dan Kaysen were the directors, and it was on explosive astrophysics. So
I think that kind of thing.
of course, it could also be done in Santa Fe.
Yes, and Santa Fe might be a little bit easier. But I mean, these things can be done, but as Peter said, there's some, if you have it completely open, it gets some people nervous about who's showing up, and that's just the nature of an organization that has a lot of security associated with it. But I think it could be done.
What about, do we have a critical mass in the UC system, including the labs? Of course, we can bring in both director for the program and experts, as we have for many of these schools. They're not dominated by the University of California, but there has to be some connection.
Right. Yeah, I think something like that could be done. What do you think, Mike? Yeah.
We're recording this, so it helps to use the microphone.
There is a structure in place which includes New Mexico State as one of the members, the universities in New Mexico with Los Alamos, and the UC schools as the institutes. So it's across the street from the Los Alamos campus, but it's designed to bring in students that have access to hardware and networks, and I think a school there would be very doable. The lab itself, I would claim, runs the most secure network on the planet that's connected to the internet, and that is not conducive to doing anything involving big data. Well, our recent experiences, let's leverage the power of the internet. Things like Google Hangouts, you could do a distributed school with code there, a lecturer. It doesn't matter physically where you are, and now with a reasonable network connection and a laptop, you can participate interactively in these types of things, and a lot of the
I actually disagree with that. Having directed one of these schools, I disagree. I think that there's really a premium on everyone being in the same room, and it's partly a matter of that it removes people from distractions. That it means that they're there doing that, and they're not also working on their project or whatever. So there's that. There's also the social aspect of it. That these schools are partly about learning some type of skills, but also partly about people forming collaborations, learning who their future colleagues are going to be, and that just does not go as well over a Google Hangout.
Well, there's an intermediate. We have rooms designed for people to congregate, which have multiple screens and are set up for video collaboration. So I think having a hybrid where you have local collections of people you could at least make it happen, you'd have a much larger group of people than you'll be able to attract to a single geographic location at one time. And one point I... Well, lowering the friction to an individual using really powerful computer hardware, for the less than the price of your cell phone bill per month, you can get tens of thousands of CPU hours in the cloud on Amazon or Google or Rackspace. And those environments are essentially exactly the same as our supercomputer centers. So even lower than writing a NERSC proposal is pull out your credit card, spend $30 on Amazon, and run these codes. We just need to put things close enough that an individual who's interested can actually run significant simulations on hardware that's very much like what we want them to come to the labs and use. Well, so 80,000 CPU hours on Amazon is... And leveraging the work you do to set up a course, having it on the web, somebody can come by 2 months later, go through that at their own pace. You multiply the effort that you put in at the front end by a huge factor.
Michael, that's good, but the large fraction of those summer schools was actually interaction with students. When the student had a problem, you're sitting there and they say, oh, what I do here, what's the problem here? And you just do it and you solve it. So it's difficult to do it, and we teach in a kind of a normal kind of lecture level. And another kind of part of those summer schools is actually interaction between students, not socially, which is always very nice to have beer and everything else, but actually on what you do and how you value that what you do. So that's very, very important kind of part of a summer school. I think that's...
I mean, you look at Coursera, you have 80,000 people around the world taking a course. I mean, we have
yes,
to interact with that community.
So I agree very much that there needs to be a balance between this, and I think that HiPACC has done a really good job of collecting all of the educational materials that have been presented at all of these courses, but they're largely not standardized. Many of them are PDFs, but not all of them. Then all the supplemental materials haven't been collected, and at the same time, it's an extraordinarily valuable resource. I find myself going to specifically the 2011 and the 2012 summer schools very often, or 2010 and 2012. But I think that having a codified mechanism where you have the coursework collated with the videos, which have also been all recorded and are provided online, using something like Coursera, like edX, or even just using something like Popcorn by the Mozilla Foundation, something like that, where you collect everything in a codified mechanism that people can go and examine it, and it's regular, it's uniform. We do this with YT, actually. What we have is we have a low barrier to entry community where people basically hang out. We have between 20 and 25 people that hang out in the chat channel at all times. This sponsors a whole bunch of off-the-cuff discussion of relevant scientific things. People discuss techniques and things like that. And I've seen this as well on things like the MESA mailing list, the modules for exploring stellar astrophysics. People actually discuss relevant scientific issues that are collected around the technology that enables them to explore those issues. And then you have things like Hangouts. We do office hours once a week. This is the kind of thing that under the HiPACC brand would bring with it this oomph and this, the really strong scientific impact, and that branding is really important for that type of thing. And having these low barrier to entry mechanisms for engaging not only vertically but also horizontally, which is, Mike described this vertical engagement with the online, with Google Hangouts, and then Mark described this horizontal engagement that you get at these summer schools. And I think that the technology is there to have simultaneous types of engagement like that.
I'll echo Matt's comments. I think the best thing about the schools that we had were the one-on-ones where the students were running through something, they had some problem, we'd sit down, we'd fix it, they'd go through, do it again, and then they'd get it. And there was a lecture in the morning describing the science, the physics behind whatever they were doing, and then in the afternoon, we went down to campus each day, worked in a room, people milling about, helping out. We had usually a faculty member and a postdoc or two going around and answering any questions. And then the force multiplier that we want is packaging that all up so that we don't reinvent the wheel again when we do this again, and that it's almost packaged up to a point where maybe not a student, but a professor someplace else could take that material and run with it very quickly, very easily. And that's the only aspect I've seen where it's, I don't think we anticipated that we'd want to do that when we started this thing, but it's just like, oh my God, we're so close. If we just put some effort in there, then I think we'd have a huge benefit. Yeah. Well, that's something we all need and would all be good. And the undergraduate course Mark described, that would be something that we all should just sit down and everybody contribute a lecture to, and we smooth it out. Somebody looks over things, smooths it out, figures out the best way to push it forward, and then we can build on it with people throwing in each year. But we have some way to standardize it, to collect the material, to update the material, etc. And that would be wonderful.
I think starting with Mark's course and your course would be great as examples of how to do it.
I mean, mine almost is, mine is, part of it needs to be standardized, but everything, my course is essentially web page, or set of web pages, right? It's, little bits of Python script. It would be extremely easy if there was a defined format for, this is the HiPACC boot camp on NumPy, SciPy, on scientific computing and Python. It would not be a ton of effort for me to take my existing course and put it into that format. So if a format could be defined, I'll volunteer right now. The next time I teach it, which will be next academic year, I'll put it all in that format and then it'll be in that format.
Great, I heard that. Alex? It's a little after 6, so we should be drawing to a close. I really appreciate all these helpful comments.
So what I've been hearing you guys talk about, it's something that I think companies like Netflix and Apple's with iTunes has been doing really well, which is what they call filtering, which would be the idea that someone like Mark could keep coming to the HiPACC website and as a teacher looking for materials, and every time he goes to the HiPACC website, new teaching materials that have been updated and these sort of things come to him. But then when I go to the website as a programmer working on some code base, all the relevant things for that code base come up to me, and I get to see it that way. I don't have to go onto the website and dig through all of these links and find my relevant material, not even know that somewhere else on the website something else has been updated. And I mean, it just sounds to me like you guys are talking about a system that will kind of bring everybody together.
What we have to do is tag it all with the right metadata. So then we
Right, which may involve someone that knows how to do these types of things. But I think that would be really great. And someone that's never come to the website before would see it in its crude version, and then the more and more that they use the website, the more and more it would become really relevant to them. And then they'd actually have reason to go there to try and do their research. And I think it would also link people together a lot. You keep talking about this reinventing the wheel. If I had been able to talk to Matt or even knew Matt existed 6 months before I started doing my work, I would have saved 6 months of my time going around and trying to, pick through what is this giant mass of data on the internet right now.
Any last comments? If not,